A big story that we've been covering for, I want to say weeks, but it's been longer than that. We're talking about the North Carolina Supreme Court race. Jefferson Griffin, the Republican, and the incumbent Democrat Allison Riggs. There are so many twists and turns in this case. A lot to break down. I'm not even going to try to break down what's been happening, what's happening now. That's why we have Julie Kay here in the studio. Thank you for being here, Julie.
Once again, I mean, I'm just here all the time now talking of every single day there's something new in this case, Nick. But today, actually, we've got something that might get us into a direction of an ending.
Okay.
That's the first time we've had a direction towards an ending, maybe this whole time.
Yes.
So the last we talked, Griffin was, of course, challenging 65,000 ballots. That had kind of been pared down to 5,000. Those are the military overseas voters that we were waiting to see. Okay, is it 5,000 that now have to go verify their ballots? That would be 4 counties, or is it just the 1 county? And per the State Board of Elections, late last night, we got the news it is just Guilford County. Those military overseas voters, probably about 1,400 people, now will have to go verify their ballots. The reason for that is because in Griffin's initial complaint, he only mentioned Guilford. He then added on, I believe, Durham, Forsyth, and Buncombe, largely left-leaning counties, but those were kind of added later on in the process. And so the State Board of Elections, per the information they got from the Court of Appeals, that's how they interpreted it. And so that means that it's very unlikely, if it continues to go that direction, and we'll talk about some ways that it could not, if that stands, then it's likely that Allison Riggs will keep her lead. In a left-leaning county like that, 1,400 ballots, even if nobody does anything, he would still need 70 or so % of those votes in his direction, and that's just not likely in a county like Guilford.
It's such a fascinating story because you just don't know. Like, you thought we had an ending at some point, and then it kept going. And honestly, it's still pending litigation. But at this point, from what you said, there could be an end in sight, and it looks like I don't want to speculate, but it looks like it could end up favoring Allison Riggs because of those left-leaning counties, right?
Absolutely, and the fact that it's just the 1 instead of 5,000 that would need to be verified. If we're just talking 1,400 votes. Her lead to begin with was only 700. It would take a lot to lose that at this point with the 1,400 ballots. So, especially in that particular county. Of course, there are things that could still happen. The Court of Appeals could come back and say, never mind, we want to do the other 3 counties as well. And again, they're all left-leaning. Most of them, not most, a majority of them may have voted for Riggs. They still have, from now on, 30 days to go verify, send in a photo ID. Again, these are military voters for the most part, so they do have IDs. It's just a question of whether or not they are going to send them in and take the time to do that. People still have to be notified at this point. That's what's happening this week, today. But yeah, all the sources that I have been speaking to say it's very unlikely, though we still need the court to come down and say it officially, it's very unlikely that Griffin would be able to overturn it at this point.
When could we get a decision? I mean, I know you talked to the sources, but I know folks are just, again, looking for
this to end.
Resolution in this. Yes. When can we get a resolution?
I would say, and it's still, who's to say, really, is the big thing. But 30 days from that notification is when we should have a better idea of whether it's Griffin or Riggs. And that is, again, barring any other intervention from the Court of Appeals, all that kind of stuff. I think then we might have an answer of who wins this particular race. However, I think this general issue is going to go on for a long time. So I believe it was yesterday that Allison Riggs filed with the Federal Court of Appeals, Fourth Circuit District, that she would be going through. And there are multiple other pending litigations from voters, from the League of Women Voters, voter rights groups. So those might continue. Even if Riggs does win and she is certified the winner, those might continue on because now the sources I've been speaking to say this sets a precedent that you can just go back and try to change the rules of an election retroactively. So the litigation is probably going to continue for a long time at the federal level, but that's doesn't mean we won't have an answer here, hopefully in the next month.
I just want to point out, you've been Excuse me. You've been covering the story so much. Have you reached? I'm asking you this, and I know the answer.
Yep.
This is for our viewers' sake. Have you reached out to Riggs? Have you reached out to Griffin? And what have they said so far about? I know this is pending litigation, but what have they said, or have they responded back to you?
Because of the fact that it's pending litigation, we haven't gotten a response from Riggs or Griffin independently. Of course, their teams say, we can't speak on this right now. And I haven't, honestly, in the last few weeks reached out. We've, of course, towards the beginning, we're trying a little harder. We didn't realize how long this was going to go on.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't either. Riggs has definitely been more forthcoming with, I know she had a rally earlier this week. Griffin has been quite a bit quieter. So they're not really talking individually to any news sources right now, just because the fact that the litigation is ongoing. I do anticipate that Allison Riggs will be more open to interviews and things once this ends, no matter which way it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to another big topic. The budget, North Carolina budget.
There's more.
Yeah, I've been in North Carolina in and out for the better part of 10 years. The budget is always a big sticking point. It takes months and months and months and months to get the budget finalized.
If we get one at all.
If we get one at all. Where are we with this year's fiscal budget?
So a couple weeks ago, Stein made his proposal, and then yesterday, or maybe it was earlier this week, the Senate then gave kind of their rebuttal to that.
Yep.
So the Senate Republicans came out with theirs, and comparing them to Stein's, honestly, there's a lot of similar priorities. Of course, Helene recovery, teacher pay, and bolstering our schools is a big one, and then tax cuts. Those are the three, I would say, biggest themes in both. They just go about them very differently. Starting with Helene, because I know that's what is top of everyone's mind, Stein's budget didn't necessarily even have money set particularly aside for Helene. He said it was created with Helene in mind. So, of course, things like road reconstruction, that kind of stuff would be impacted by his budget, but it wasn't necessarily put in like a Helene box, though he did say he supported more aid packages, which he's pushing another one now. We've already gotten that $524 million passed through the General Assembly. He wants another one already. And then the Senate's, it's a little bit more outlined, more clearly. I have it up here. Yeah, it would have $700 from other state sources that would go into a specific Helene fund.
Okay.
So that's a little bit more concrete. They don't necessarily say exactly what they want to spend that on yet. Of course, recovery efforts are so fluid that the needs changed. It has about $25 million set aside for what they want so far, so that would be sending it to GROW, or the Governor's Recovery Office for Western North Carolina. And then also emergency response to schools, rebolstering the community college system in Western North Carolina, some things like that might fall through the cracks otherwise. But I think we can expect housing reconstruction, road reconstruction, debris removal, the things we've been talking about all along. They also would replenish our rainy day fund to pre-Helene levels. Of course, we've kind of taken a lot from that.
Yeah.
Helene was a rainy day for sure.
Yes.
And that would replenish it back to about $1.1 billion. So if there was another natural disaster or they needed to pull more of that for Helene, they could.
And Democrats, Republicans, they seem to agree on Helene recovery, but outside of that, there's
how to do it is a big question. I think the one main thing that everyone seems to agree on is we need more from the federal government, especially after over the weekend when the White House decided not to extend our FEMA situation here in North Carolina. So this is kind of all ties together. That's why Stein was pushing for more federal funding this week, and that's why this budget is so timely.
Julie Kay, ladies and gentlemen, covering all things politics in the newsroom. She does a fantastic job doing that. And she also has lunch at her desk. So I want to make sure you get to lunch. Thank you for the update.
My pita bread.
Before you go, where can folks check you out on TV?
We're going to be on at 4 and 5. 4 with an update on the Supreme Court, and 5 with the budget. That one I'll dive a bit more into teacher pay and what that looks like.
Okay. Julie, enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Julie.